Good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. Jesse Cofield has returned because we're putting the band back together.
Woo!
Yeah, let's go. It's Freaky Friday up in this studio. I'm
Yeah.
Emerson Lotzi, a lot to get to. And hey, Nick Fryer.
Okay. Nick's here too, but let's talk about all the things that are on today's show.
Yes,
Okay,
this is a tease, Nick.
Spring training gets underway across Major League Baseball. We're going to take a look at some interesting futures related to that on the DK Sportsbook.
Okay.
The rich getting richer in the NHL.
Ooh.
Best bets on the final weekend of college hoops before conference play tips off. That's just a little sampler of what we're going to be getting into.
But let's go ahead and kick it off with the big boys around the association. What do we have tonight, Nick? 8-game slate. So let's break it down. Sure. We have you here, again, Nick Fryer, as well as Gare Bear on the right. We have Chinmay Vaidya over on the left. And we're going to start with you, Mr. In Studio. So everybody in DFS tonight, they're the games you have to choose from, everyone. Which high-priced player are you definitely going to roster? There are some big names to choose from here, dude.
Yeah, I mean, the first one that jumps out is LaMelo Ball. Obviously,
Yeah.
when you look at that Hornets-Timberwolves game, and I get it why people would want to roster him. He was doing well before the break. Anytime that he's in the mix, yeah, of course.
We're going to just unmute your mic.
Oh, that would be...
That's not your mic, that's your IFB.
Yeah, well, that would be helpful. Anyways.
Sorry about this guy, everybody. All right, here we go. 3. Do you want to start
I
over?
don't even have my mic on.
Oh, it was off.
Your
All right.
mic was off.
Let's
It
make sure
wasn't
it's not
even on
muted.
mute.
It's not muted.
All
It's
right,
not muted.
now
Okay,
we're good.
my point...
Continue.
All right,
the
so
point-
here we go. Let me ask it again so when Blake can clip this up later, it's nice and clean.
Okay,
so,
3, 2, 1.
So 8 games to choose from here. A lot of big names available. Which high-priced player are you going to roster, Nick Fryer?
Well, LaMelo Ball is a guy that jumps out right away. Of course, he's at the top of it all, right? He's at 11K tonight. But another guy that you can go look at from this game, high-priced option, is Anthony Edwards too. Because with LaMelo Ball, yeah, he's going to get you numbers, but he's $2,000 cheaper on DraftKings. And now you got Kelly Oubre possibly back in the mix. He's probable tonight. Terry Rozier is probable tonight as well. How is that going to impact things? But we know when LaMelo is in, this is going to be an up-tempo game. We know with Anthony Edwards, he can fill it up. So that's the guy that I'm going to be going with tonight.
All right, Gare Bear, your mic is on. Let me hear your voice. Tell me which high-priced player you're rostering tonight.
I hope it's on.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Kawhi Leonard at $9,200. Kawhi's been sort of sneakily just Kawhi lately. You go back to the start of January. So basically when the calendar turned to 2023, he's averaging over 26 points per game in the 18 games he's started in that span of time. And this looks like a pretty good matchup tonight against the Kings. We know in general the Kings play really high-scoring games. That's very appealing from a DFS perspective. The Kings are also on the second night of a back-to-back. This is a team that already ranks 24th in defensive rating in the month of February. I don't know if they're going to have their legs tonight. I think this could be a really high-scoring game for the Clippers. And Kawhi, if you just want to isolate his own production, at least 50 DraftKings points in 4 of his last 8 games. So he easily has the ceiling to exceed his price tag, which is below 10K right now.
Chinmay, how much money are you spending on your top DFS player on this slate tonight?
You know, not a lot. Both guys just mentioned some great options. I'm going to second Garion with Kawhi Leonard, 46.7 DKFP over his last 7 games. He got some extended rest with the All-Star break. We know how important that is for Kawhi and his overall health and load management, what they're trying to do over there with the Clippers. Kings on the second night of a back-to-back are generally not good, and they haven't been good defensively. They just played a very high-scoring game last night against the Blazers, and I think Kawhi is going to have a big game here at 9,200. I think that's the easy option. Anthony Edwards is also great, and you know, if you're trying to stay away from these games, Julius Randle is another solid option there against the Wizards coming off the All-Star break.
All right, easy to pay up for star power, but who are you going to roster for some value who fits in with that star pick, Garion?
So this is like a vendetta pick for me because I really wanted to use this guy in his first game with the Suns. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the player pool that night, and of course he had a massive game and played a ton of minutes, but Terrence Ross should still have a major role with the Suns tonight. Cam Payne is questionable. That could really be the only thing that maybe throws a hiccup into this, but Ross is just $3,600. He played 25 minutes in his first game with the Suns. And again, this was after riding the bench for the better part of 6 weeks with the Magic. He took 17 shots in those 25 minutes. That equates out to a 31.7% usage rate. I probably can't guarantee that that's going to keep happening, but this is the kind of thing the Suns need right now with no Kevin Durant. They traded so much of their depth. Terrence Ross is going to play a huge role in this game. I would also say, just in general, this is a slate that doesn't have a ton of obvious value right now, but there are still 4 teams on the second night of a back-to-back. So I think Ross could be popular this morning, but when we get some of these injury news on the back-to-backs coming in, maybe his ownership gets a little smaller.
All right, Chinmay, you got your top end talent. Who are you pairing with him for some value?
Onyeka Okongwu is a nice option with John Collins out due to a concussion, but I'm going back to that Clippers-Kings game. Mason Plumlee at 5,100 has played solid minutes in his first 2 games with the Clippers, and Zubac is out tonight with a calf injury, which means that Plumlee is likely to start, likely to get big minutes. Kings not really great on the interior defensively, so I like the Clippers big man to have a big night in the middle.
All right, Fryer, who do you like to have a big night that will also be your value play?
You know, I actually do usually like to go with Mason Plumlee, and he could be a good option here tonight, but I'm actually going to go on the other side of this game, and I'm going to go with Keegan Murray at 4.9K. He's dropped 32-plus DK fantasy points both times that he's seen the Clippers this season. He's had 2 chances against them, 2 for 2 in that regard. That's 7 times value on tonight's price tag. And look, we've seen him do well on second legs of back-to-backs before. The Clippers do give up a lot of DK fantasy points to bigs, and the big thing for him too is not just that he has a good ceiling in this game, but he also has a strong floor because we've seen his game be pretty adaptable. He had 6 assists in 1 game before the break.
All right, let's go to the DK Sportsbook here. Chinmay, I'll start with you. Favorite team to cover the spread tonight? Who is it and why?
I don't know how much this line has moved, but when I last checked, the Heat were 1.5 point underdogs against the Bucks for some reason. Giannis is not going to play tonight, and Miami is relatively healthy. You know, Jimmy Butler is in, Bam Adebayo's in, Tyler Hero said that he's going to play tonight. Kevin Love is available. So Miami is healthy for the first time in probably a few months, and Milwaukee is banged up, and they don't have their star. So I think the Heat cover this one quite easily. Miami has actually beaten Milwaukee both times when Giannis was out, and even with Middleton coming back in, he's probably still going to be on a minutes limit. I like the Heat tonight to cover the spread.
Fryer, what about you, man? Which team you sticking with?
You know, I don't understand it, but I always feel like I go with the Knicks in any situation. I don't know why.
You and I talk Knicks a lot.
I go with the Knicks a lot. I go with the Thunder a lot. They covered the other day, by the way. I know I didn't beat the Jazz, Lauri Markkanen and everything. I know you love him.
I'm a huge Lauri Markkanen guy.
You are. You're a borderline stan. But I'm going to go with the Knicks tonight. 1.5 favorites against the Wizards on the road. You can take them straight up to the value, still pretty similar. Potentially no Bradley Beal tonight. No, Mitch Robinson also might be back. What's kind of interesting is these 2 teams have not the same numbers, but similar trends. The Wizards aren't all that great as home favorites, straight up or against the spread. They're both 5 and 6. They're also 14 and 12 at home, which, yes, it's still a winning record, but it's one of the worst records actually in the NBA at home. And then the Knicks are 7 and 2 against the spread as road favorites, and they're also 7 and 2 straight up in that situation.
So I think Knicks have covered 4 of their last 6 road games as well.
Usually
so
a good play. It's not like it's an unpopular play.
I'm backing you up here, homie.
Oh, thanks. That's the change of pace.
Gary, and favorite team to cover the spread tonight?
I'll back both of you guys up. It's the Knicks.
Yeah.
Look, when the
Look at
Knicks
us.
are on the road,
Woo.
just bet the Knicks. Like, it's that simple. They covered a 65.5% clip on the road this season. That is by far the best mark in the NBA. And Nick mentioned this, but I think it's really worth repeating. Mitchell Robinson is questionable for this game. The Knicks defense is at an entirely different level when Mitchell Robinson is available. I mean, that's really been the only sort of negative about this team the last couple weeks is the interior defense was bad with no Mitchell Robinson. So his return would be massive for a team that already has the 5th best net rating in the NBA in the month of February. I love the Knicks at this number.
All right, a game total that you're going to be on tonight, Nick. What do you think?
I don't like backing both New York teams in any situation. Obviously, this isn't backing them, but this is going with the total here, going with the over for Nets Bulls, obviously on the road in Chicago. It's set at 223 last I checked. It is still at 223 on DraftKings Sportsbook. There we go. 2 teams that do not see the over hit all that often, which does explain why this number is the lowest one on the board tonight. But in the 3 games that we've gotten the Bridges, Dinwiddie duo, if you want to call it that, we've seen the over hit 2 times in 3 chances. The last time these 2 teams met too, we saw the over get right next to this number 2. So with Mikal Bridges in the mix, I expect the over to hit here.
All right, Garion, what do you think? Which game are you going to go with? Highest on the board looks like it's Hornets Timberwolves right now.
Yeah, that should be a really high-scoring game. One that shouldn't be as high-scoring as the book thinks it might. I'm going to take the under in Houston Golden State, which is at 231 right now. This really just comes down to Houston's inability to score. I mean, you look at their offensive rating the last 3 games they played before the All-Star break. It was only 98 points per 100 possessions. That's almost impossible to do in this version of the NBA. Houston just can't put the ball in the basket. And at a certain point, you need both teams to score efficiently to get to a number this high. No Kevin Porter Jr., no Jalen Green tonight. I just don't see how the Rockets can cobble together a competent offense. So it doesn't really matter what the Warriors are able to do. And by the way, Steph Curry's still not playing in this game. Second night of a back-to-back. I don't think the Warriors offense is going to be operating at full capacity. So I just think this number is way too high.
All right, Chinmay, what do you think? A game total that you're on tonight?
Yeah, I like the under in Houston Golden State. The Rockets weren't all that efficient with Porter Jr. and Green out on the floor, and with them both out, the Rockets could go in full tank mode and just play a bunch of young guys who don't really know what they're doing. Golden State on the second night of a back-to-back. I think the under is good there. I'm also going with the under for Kings Clippers. I know that the Kings have been one of the top offenses in the league, and the Clippers have been scoring well, but the Kings are 9-19 to the over as the road team this season, and they're 5-8 on the over when they don't have the rest advantage. The Clippers have been alternating overs and unders over their last 8 games, but I think the Kings won't have their legs tonight, and LA should lock down here and prevent this total, which is still pretty high. 237 is a big number. I like the under in this one for Kings Clippers.
All right, Gary, and quickly, an underdog in the slate you see coming out on top tonight.
I know they're on the second night of a back-to-back. It's hard to wrap your head around the fact that the Cavaliers are underdogs tonight. I know it's only a point, but give me that all day. They are 6-2 ATS. They're past 8 games. They have the best net rating in the NBA in the month of February. This is a very good team, and you very rarely get to bet them as underdogs. I will just take the points there.
Chinmay Vaidya, a dog you're backing.
Yeah, I'll take the Brooklyn Nets against the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls should win this game easily on paper. The Nets don't have really any superstars. The Bulls are getting DeRozan back. But if you follow the Chicago team this whole season, the top teams they tend to play very well against, and these teams that they should easily walk over, they lay an egg. And I think the Nets have enough good rotation pieces to put together a strong effort here tonight against Chicago. Give me Brooklyn, even straight up, I'll take them on the money line plus 110. I think they get the job done here tonight against the Bulls.
Fryer, you're nodding in agreement there?
Yeah, well, both of these guys make great picks, which is par for the course with these
Yes,
two. But
indeed.
I am going to lean more towards the Nets if I have to pick between the two here.
Okay.
I just think, from a narrative perspective, Mikal Bridges has something to prove. Spencer Dinwiddie, this is a team he always does well against. And when you look at the Bulls, too, they have not done all that great at home. I mean, again, 16-13, that's still a winning record, but it is still one of the worst records at home in the league.
All right, this is an easy one. Favorite bet across the entire slate this evening?
Good luck with this one,
Let's
guys.
go, Chinmay. The tough questions. Capital J journalism. You're Chinmay.
Well, I mentioned it earlier. I think, Miami is going to cover this one pretty easily. I'll take the Heat plus 1.5, and then I'll also go with the Nets, either straight up or against the spread. I think both those teams are in very favorable spots. Even that Cavaliers bet that Garion threw out there, that's a good one. But I like Heat plus 1.5. I think that's the easy play.
Fryer, hit us with your favorite bet for this evening.
I mean, I like both of the game plays that I gave out. The total is probably my third favorite of the 3 that we talked about here, but I think Knicks going up against the Wizards tonight, it's just, this spread just seems a little too small.
All right, Gary, take us home. Where are you going?
Nick likes the Knicks. I like the Knicks. You can't nix the Knicks' chances to win
Damn.
tonight. Take the Knicks.
Woo.
Wow.
Damn, dude. All right, you guys all on the same page today, which I like. Are you still on the show coming up later?
Yes.
You're another
Yes,
segment?
the band's back together, like you said. Oh, what's the name of the band? Do you have a name?
No, we'll figure it out during this break because Mike Breen, everybody, on the Old Man and the 3 podcast with JJ Redick, so talking about his signature call and how the iconic bang came to be.
The origin of the bang apparently came from you randomly yelling it at Fordham basketball games in the stands. Did you ever get any weird looks for that?
No, do you ever, when you go to a college game and you see somebody either dressed with all the war paint on or screaming stuff? No, it's when you're a college kid. There's nothing matters more than if your college team wins. So there was a group of about 8 of us that we went to every single road game. Now Fordham back then didn't do a lot of traveling. They'd go down to LaSalle, Philadelphia, St. Peter's, Jersey City, and we'd go to all the games. And when a Fordham player hit a big shot, I would yell bang. And that was before the 3-point line. There was no 3-point line back then. And then when I started doing the broadcasts on the college radio station, I tried it and I didn't think it worked. I didn't like it because I didn't say the basket was good. And I thought, no, they don't know that. The listeners don't know that. So I shelved it. But then when I started doing like these high school games of the week for a local cable channel, I tried it again. And there was a game, I think it was in Atlanta. We used to do these Friday night games, and there's no better atmosphere than a Friday night high school game in a town where the team is good. And the place was packed, maybe 3,000, but the loudest gym I'd ever been in my life. And it's going crazy. And there was a big shot at the end, and I tried it because my voice was not capable of overriding the crowd. And it kind of clicked like, oh, that was a perfect way to just one syllable, concise word on a big shot and let the crowd take over the rest, because you use the crowd for part of your broadcast, as they call laying out. And I liked it then. So that's when I started using it more and more. And when I first started doing it on Nick games as a Nick radio voice, I remember there was a columnist killed me for it, called it lame. And I'm thinking, I don't agree with that. Can I ask a couple of people, do you think? And they said, no, it's good. It's good. So I kept it.
Yeah, I tried to make dunk shot my shtick, and it just didn't work.
Well, we both kind of crushed you on that.
Did the columnist ever not apologize, but did he ever revise his?
No.
What a terrible take.
Yeah, well,
It's the only reason he's in the Hall of Fame.
but I've tried dunk shot a few times after, and it's not sticking.
It doesn't resonate.
Right.
It doesn't resonate.
Right.
Do you remember your first bang in an NBA game?
It had to be a Nick game on the radio. I can't give you the first one.
You told, I think it was during the finals last year, if I'm not mistaken, you went on our friend Pablo's podcast, ESPN Daily, and you called the Ray Allen shot against the Spurs the most significant bang of your career. What was it about that particular moment that was so meaningful?
Because it decided a championship. That shot doesn't go down. San Antonio wins. That goes in. Now they've got a chance, obviously to win a title that they're desperate to win. Also, it had something to do with him as well, and you could relate to this as well as anybody. Every single time I went to an arena to cover his games, whether it was Seattle, Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, I like to get there early. He was always there ahead of time, and he was always out on the court. And those were the shots he was taking. So if anybody was comfortable in taking that big shot, it was him. And to see and know all the hard work he put into it for that moment, it meant something to me as a fan that this son of a gun, all that stuff, now it comes to fruition with this one great shot. And because it meant so much in what was a great game between two great teams with some of the great players that the league has ever seen, I think that's probably why. It's hard to pick one, but that's got to be.
All right, this weekend, guess what? Hell, not this weekend, today, unless you count Friday as a weekend. These two spring training games, they're happening. Spring training games are underway across Major League Baseball. A few weeks away from the World Baseball Classic, so overall, we're a little more than a month from opening day. So believe it or not, baseball season is approaching. And believe it or not, people out there bet spring training games.
Yeah,
and build
which is-
DFS lineup. Sorry, this is for breaking news, Billy.
It is
I'm like
absolutely
the Adam Schefter of
fascinating that
DK.
people do that. So, but it is interesting, right? Because they're spring training games.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Nick Fryer, Eric Halterman, Gary, and Thorne here.
Wow, Eric, I like your haircut.
Okay. You're muted,
Sorry,
Eric, so it's good
you're
that we're working
it's
that
the
out.
theme today.
All right.
Mostly just thought I took my headphones off because they aren't
Oh,
working.
you have
but
nice,
I'm
you
sure
have
it makes
nice
my hair
flow.
look great.
You have very nice flow.
Okay, so
talk about my hair like
Nick,
that.
Nick, what is the best way to approach filling out DFS lineups for spring training games? Because obviously it's got to be different.
Oh,
Well, I lean more sportsbook when it comes to this kind of stuff, and even still, it is a bit challenging. The one thing that you want to try and look out for is when you get split squad opportunities. Whenever you get one of those kind of situations, then you want to lead towards a team that has their full roster available. And obviously, it's going to be a little bit of a different situation this season because you do have the World Baseball Classic, which also means a lot of the better hitters right now are going to be gone. So I would think leaning towards more unders to start this year. Maybe you can do that most years. I'm not saying that, but right now, you're not going to have a lot of big-time hitters, and pitchers are usually ahead of hitters to start the season too.
Okay, so Gary, do you agree you lean more towards betting for this stuff?
I agree that, generally speaking, my first piece of advice, if you're thinking about betting on spring training, would be don't. My second piece of advice would be, this is all impossible to handicap to begin with, so if you do really have to put some money on this, use that to your advantage. I mean, even look at today's 2-game slate. Obviously, the numbers are the way they are because one of these teams is quote-unquote a home team and the other one is quote-unquote a road team. At this point, there is no way to know who's going to be playing in the third or fourth inning of this game. In spring training now, pitchers can leave if they hit a pitch count in a certain inning and then come back. Like, none of this makes any sense, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So in that vein, if I tell you that, the Rangers on the run line today are plus 140, maybe just take the plus 140. Seattle on the run line is plus 145. Just take those plus money bets because, again, there's no reason that they should be plus 145 on the run line versus any other number. I mean, I would just bet plus money bets if you have to do it because, again, there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. So maybe use that to your advantage.
All right, Eric, what's your approach when you're filling out DFS lineups or betting on spring training?
Yeah, echoing some of those thoughts, mostly just don't get arrogant and think you know things because you probably don't. It's spring training. We barely know who's going to play. When we see the lineups, we know who's going to take 1, maybe 2 turns through the order. We can't necessarily play the matchups because the opposing starting pitcher, maybe he'll go through the order once in these first few games, but we don't even really know. For daily fantasy, I guess I'd lean on the biggest names who are batting early because maybe they'll hit twice. It seems like everybody's priced the same at these first few games, so you might as well go with the names you've heard of who are hitting high in the lineup. But don't think that you've got some amazing edge here. Usually, almost everything in spring training is just so random. We don't even know who's going to be, trying their hardest to win these games. Guys are working on things, right? The goal isn't even to win. So thinking that you have some great edge as to who is going to win is probably not all that likely. So I would be with Gary in here and mostly just say, well, this team has the higher payout, and neither team cares all that much about the result. So mostly lean their way. Pay a little attention to the lineups. Maybe occasionally you'll get a tidbit, but in most games, assume that you don't know very much.
Okay, so if you're going to bet on the games, you need to do it with a different approach than you would with the regular season. Gabriel, you say just steer clear of it, but answer me this then. What's your top tip in terms of what we can learn from spring training games when it comes to considering betting MLB futures here, dude?
Yeah, so I think the one definitive thing you can take from both a betting and fantasy perspective and kind of use it to that advantage is batting order positioning. I think that might be the one thing that you can kind of start to glean from what's going on in spring training. And that's not even just necessarily what the spring training lineups are on a day-to-day basis, but that's what the managers are talking about and kind of the insight you're getting from the beat reporters. But I do think if you start seeing lineups, like Philadelphia is a good example. Kyle Schwarber, primarily their leadoff hitter for the entirety of last season. Now you've got Trey Turner in the mix, and he's going to be hitting leadoff, and Schwarber's going to be hitting second. This is the kind of stuff you can pick up on in spring training and start noticing these lineup trends. And where that's useful in terms of betting, futures in particular, is some of these counting-based futures, like hits leader or, to a lesser extent, home runs leader, but runs scored leader. Where you're batting in the batting order is so important and crucial from a volume perspective to those particular future bets that's kind of where I'm curious to see some of these very early spring training lineups in the next couple weeks.
All right, Eric, what can you pick up in spring training that you could use to your advantage when betting futures?
Yeah, batting order is one of the two big ones. The other one that I look a lot at in spring training is just trying to check up on all these off-season storylines about swing changes, pitch changes, that sort of thing. You hear a ton in early February about, oh, yeah, I'm going to be the best player I've ever been because of XYZ that I did over the offseason. You know, some of those are true. We shouldn't just completely discount that. We should absolutely have our eyes open to these stories saying, hey, this guy worked on his swing. He's doing something different this year. He's not going to be the guy that you saw the last several years. Usually we can start to tell in spring training. You could see clips of, oh, yeah, he really is loading his hands differently. Or you can see the stats saying, oh, he really did throw this pitch, 30% of the time in this outing, and he only threw it twice all year last year. So really keep an eye on the stories of guys who said they're not going to be who they are before. This is our first chance to really know. It is just spring training, but in spring training, you figure guys are going to be working on everything that's new. So if you have somebody in mind who you think might be a new player this year in at least some minor sense, keep an eye on that because we'll probably know in the next few weeks.
All right, Fryer, so if you haven't or if you're waiting to bet an MLB future for a player, for a team, what exactly are you looking for right now as spring training starts?
Well, I think Eric raised a good point about, well, they both raised good points, but Eric is specifically talking about the off-season stuff and where guys are changing places, too. You talk about adjustments being made, too, but guys that are in new situations right now, you got to be aware of that and see if a guy moved to maybe a bigger market, a little bit more of a spotlight. Not everybody can handle that. We've seen that over the years, whether you're talking New York, Philly, Boston, all that different stuff. So guys adjusting there. The other thing is, too, anybody who popped off last season maybe had a larger workload, more importantly, especially pitchers, because if you see those guys show a little bit of fatigue early on, doesn't mean they can't adjust, doesn't mean a break won't do them some good and allow them to make a mid-season adjust. But early on in the season, you may want to fade them, whether that's on DFS or from a sports betting side. And if you're talking about future bets, too, that may hurt and may lead more towards unders hitting.
Speaking of futures, great transition. Let's dive into some season-long stat leaders listed on the DK Sportsbook. So let's start with home run leader. Aaron Judge plus 600. Can he defend his crown? Mike Trout plus 800 or somebody else? What do we think? Historically, home run leaders more often than not actually been someone with like super long opening odds. If you look at the past 14 years. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely correct that Aaron Judge should be at the top there. Plus 600 doesn't seem unfair for a guy who basically lapped the field last year. I ordinarily wouldn't pick from the absolute top of the field, but I think he's among the best bets. I don't think I would look at Trout in second just because that's basically a bet on his health. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable making that bet at this stage of his career, unfortunately. Guys from that next clump, maybe Yordan Alvarez. He's got as big power as anybody and hits the ball very often too, which helps for homers. Kyle Schwarber strikes out, but he at least has the park to help him. Somebody like Austin Riley, even, there's maybe an underrated minor factor with home runs is that you can't hit a home run if you walk. So some of these big power hitters, they walk a lot, which makes them better players, but it also takes away their total number of opportunities to hit a homer. Riley's got about a league average walk rate and not much less power than a lot of the guys ahead of him. I think he's a decent shout in that sort of second tier.
All right, Nick, what do you think when you look at these odds?
So against Aaron Judge, because I think, yes, it does make sense to have him there, but a number that I found that goes against him actually pulling it off this year, since 2005, only two guys have led their league in home runs in back-to-back seasons. That's Joey Bats and Pujols, and Joey Bats is the only one who led all of baseball in home runs in back-to-back seasons. I know Garion loves that one. I think that Austin Riley is probably my favorite guy because the other two that I'm also considering, obviously Mike Trout, the injuries is the big issue there in his back, but Pete Alonso's another guy I like a lot at plus 900. He's always in the mix, but he's playing in the World Baseball Classic. Same goes for Ronald Acuna, who's 13th in the odds right now at plus 2,800. A guy who I do find interesting, but had injuries. He's playing in the World Baseball Classic. He may start off hot, and I do think of the longer odds, so 13, I like him, but I think Austin Riley right now is probably the smartest bet. 33 a couple years ago, 38 this past year, so his numbers seem to keep climbing.
All right, Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, I had two guys circled as sort of like mid-tier long shots here. Austin Riley was number one, and Kyle Schwarber was number two. I think Schwarber is interesting, because he does sort of check a lot of those red flag boxes Eric was talking about. He limits his actual batted ball events with incredibly high strikeout and walk rates. However, that is slightly offset by the fact he always hits near the top of the Phillies lineup, which increases his plate appearance expectancy, and he generally DHs, so you can kind of profile him as someone you can trust to stay healthy for a majority of the season. He was first among qualified hitters in fly ball rate last season. That's really nice. And when you look at expected home runs, it's kind of lost in the shuffle because Judge was so far ahead of everyone else. but it really was 3 tiers. It was Judge at over 60, Schwarber at 50.4 expected home runs, and then everyone else. Like, Schwarber was also on his own tier. It just got lost in the shuffle because Judge was as good as Judge was.
All right, as for the awards market here, gentlemen, we're talking Cy Young, MVP, Rookie of the Year. What really stands out to you? Because for Steve Buchanan, who I think still works here, I haven't seen him like in a few weeks.
Yeah.
He does.
Remember, like last year, he predicted the Robbie Ray Cy Young winner. That's right.
Stevie
He has
biceps.
another one here. Likes the George Kirby.
I feel like this gets really weird with like we did that together. He just talks more than I do.
Yeah. Listen, this is producer Samir was like obsessed with this tweet and really wanted us to get it in. So go ahead, Gare Bear, quickly on this.
I'm just I also had Robbie Ray. I was on that show with him. Anyway, let's go for a long shot for AL MVP. Narrative based. Love narrative when it comes to MVP. Carlos Correa at 35-1. Not only do the projection systems love the Twins to win the American League Central, which I think is a big element to the MVP. You've got to be on a team that exceeds expectations. Correa, 4th among AL players the last 2 seasons in F-WAR, so good base. And then you've just got everything that happened with Carlos Correa this offseason. Like, if he comes out and is amazing for the Twins this year, the narrative is going to be, wow, this guy was a Giant. They didn't trust him. He was a Met. They didn't trust his health. Goes back to Minnesota. They win the division. He's amazing. The ankle held up. I just think you can really build a compelling case. And he's 35-1, which are pretty long odds for someone of Correa's ability.
Okay, what do you think, Fryer?
Spencer Strider to win the NL Cy Young is a guy I like a lot. He's actually got the same odds for being the strikeout leader and for being the NL Cy Young. Last year, 202 strikeouts in just 131 innings pitched. His first full season, his second year of MLB action. So this is a guy, I mean, look, you got a lot of great pitching in the NL East, and they're going to be facing a lot worse competition because we have that balanced schedule. You're going to be hearing us talk about that a ton, of course. But I think you have a team that's a playoff contender, quality pitcher who had a really good start last year. I like him for both the strikeout leader department and for the NL Cy Young.
All right, Eric, which MLB awards future you like?
Yeah, I want to toss out a couple even longer narrative or longer shot narrative names in the AL. Maybe Corey Seager with the shift change could really start hitting for a very high average alongside his good power. If the Rangers finally come back and Seager is seen as the leader of that offense, he could be there. Or how about Rafael Devers at the same spot? Nobody's really picking the Red Sox to make a lot of noise this year, but if they get there anyway, if they even sneak into the wild card, I think he could be a candidate. And then the Rookie of the Year, look for guys who aren't confirmed as making the majors yet, whose odds would jump if that actually happens. I'm thinking Andrew Painter looks like he's the 12th option in the NL Rookie of the Year. He has a real shot to win that Phillies fifth starter job, and if he does, he's got the talent to win the Rookie of the Year award. Again, plus 1,700 right now. I think he's probably as talented, as likely to have a good season this year as Grayson Rodriguez, who's plus 1,000 in the AL and is 8th off the board. But because we're pretty sure Rodriguez is debuting and it's still up in the air that Painter will make the opening day rotation, I think you get a very good deal with Painter there.
All right, good stuff, guys. We got the Pala Casino 400 going down this weekend. Is defending champ Kyle Larson worth his price tag? Let's find out with NASCAR Price Check.
Welcome to the Price Check. I am Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries for Auto Club, whose salary jumped up this week. Eric Jones, $6,600 up to $7,700. Surprisingly, he scored the second most fast lap points at Fontana last year, but later on in the season, he went on to win at Darlington. Both those tracks are fast crews up against the wall. Christopher Bell, $8,600 up to $9,500. Although he is a legendary dirt track racer, he doesn't really like to run the wall. Still a strong play at JGR Carr. Kyle Larson, $9,900 up to $10,800. This legendary dirt track racer does love to run the wall. He won at Homestead and Fontana last season, both with fast crews up against the wall. Whose salary dropped this week? Brad Keselowski, $8,800 down to $7,900. By the end of last season, Keselowski was priced in the $6,000 range. probably be there soon. Michael McDowell, 6,500 down to 5,700. DraftKings is up to it again. They routinely mispriced McDowell last year, and that was the best season of his career. William Byron, 9,700 down to 8,900. No one ran more laps inside the top 5 at intermediate tracks than William Byron. He almost won at Fontana before wrecking into Tyler Reddick while running in second place. Favorite play of the week, Tyler Reddick, 9,100. No one likes to rip the wall more than Tyler Reddick. He scored 40 hog points at Fontana last year before wrecking. Oh, by the way, he's running double duty this weekend. Noah Gregson, 6,200. Actually, Gregson might like to rim ride more than Tyler Reddick. He has no fear. He could siphon off fast lap points throughout the race by running the wall. All right, guys, check out DK Nation for all your DFS information and needs. If you got NASCAR questions, find me on Twitter at @RaceForThePrize. I'm Pierce Teacher. Catch me on DK Live.
All right, welcome back to The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I'm Jesse Cofield. He is Emerson Latzia. We're going to talk some hockey right now, but we got to talk about this. The rich get richer. The Bruins, who not only lead the NHL, but are on pace to challenge the single-season wins and points record, upgraded their roster by acquiring defenseman Dmitry Orlov and forward Garrett Hathaway from the Capitals in a 3-team deal on Thursday. So before we jump into today's slate, I mean, this is an all-in win-now move by Boston. Jeff, what message are they sending with this trade?
I mean, they're doing the smart thing. I mean, honestly, the message they're sending is we're not idiots. We have a dominant team. Of course, we're going to get some depth and make sure that losing a star defenseman doesn't hurt us down the stretch, and that we have a guy on the fourth line we can interchange and make some moves with in the playoffs. I mean, that's basically the message that they're sending. I mean, there's nothing fancy about this. We all know the Bruins are the best team in the league right now. If they didn't go out and get some depth at these key positions, I mean, the message they'd be sending is what are you doing right now? So they're covering their bases is basically essentially what they're doing. Dmitry Orlov is a really good defenseman. He could slot in a top 4, even a top 2 position any night they want. And the beautiful thing about the Bruins is they don't even really need him right now. So, it's just a smart overall move. Like I said, it's the obvious choice, but the fact they went out and actually did it, and they only gave up draft picks, so they're set. They're just setting themselves up for what should be a really interesting playoff run.
Paul, what does this mean for the Capitals, who have taken a nosedive in the Eastern Conference lately?
Yeah, they're doing a favor to one of their veteran guys, giving him a chance to get a cup run in. But this is a team that's in big trouble, I think, Washington, because their core is getting older, Jesse. That's the short answer. But I also want to look at this from the Minnesota perspective, okay? And not a lot of people are talking about this, but the Wild, this is the second deal that they kind of helped broker by sending money out and getting some mid to late round picks in. Now, if I was in their shoes, I'd be asking for a hell of a lot more than a 4th or 5th rounder, because in the last 6 years, if you look at the history of 4th and 5th rounders, not many of them made the NHL. So I'd rather spend that money and help broker a trade by getting a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round pick. If anything lower than that, it's not worth my time or interest. So I'm surprised that Wild have done it twice, and I wouldn't advocate any other team get involved if that's the value of the compensation. Boston certainly picked up a serviceable player in Orlov. He's certainly going to be no worse than a second pairing defenseman there. Insurance also, if any of the top guys get hurt, he's a good guy to sub in on the power play as well. So they made a smart pickup. Not sure what Minnesota's doing.
Yeah.
And Washington's going down the tubes.
I think the Wild stopped another Western Conference team from benefiting from Orlov and Hathaway, and then, I don't know, they get something out of it, right, with a future asset. Paul, let's go to tonight's slate. 6-game slate here. Favorite puck line or money line bet tonight? What do you got, Chief?
I'm going to go to Leafs plus 125 over Minnesota. The Wild is on the second of back-to-backs. They got a shutout performance out of Marc-Andre Fleury last night, but I think they're going to be a little bit tired coming into Toronto, and the Leafs are getting their game together again. It looks like all things are in order after O'Reilly pickup, although you might see him in a third-line role where I think he should be, and for a different look. Colorado on the puck line plus 225. It's a game that they want to send a message to Winnipeg that they're still the beasts of that division. And so I think that Colorado, beasts of the West for all I'm concerned, and they want to send that message. So I'm backing them on the puck line. I like Buffalo on the second of back-to-backs on the road. Rare opportunity to get a double in the state of Florida, but I think the Panthers are in a bit of trouble. So I'll take the Sabres on the money line in that one. And finally, the LA Kings, a slim favorite on the money line at plus 105 as well.
Jeff Ulrich.
Well, I'm gonna agree with Paul on the Leafs call. I don't want to go against that team right now with Ryan O'Reilly, but I'm gonna actually disagree with him on the other ones. You got the Kings coming in on a back-to-back. I mean, this is a team again. You know, the goaltending to me is a spot where, you know, you could potentially see the Kings, regress lately. And the Kings just haven't been that good on these back-to-backs. They're 2-7 in their last 9 games. They played in a 3-4 situation. You've got the Islanders who are pretty well rested. Again, like they're 5-7 in their last 7 home games. I think just taking the Islanders on the money line there is actually fine. And I think you could even look to them on the puck line potentially at plus 195. But I just take them on the money line. And then again, like, Florida's been sitting at home for 3 days. They're well rested. It's a big game. I like the Sabres, but their goaltending it's not enough for me in this spot. I could see the Panthers really putting one on tonight, so I actually don't hate them on the puck line. So those are kind of the 2 spots I'm really looking at. Definitely like the Islanders at home, especially. I think that minus 130 line is pretty fair considering the situation the Kings are in.
Jeff, favorite goal total and your lean?
So I'm going to give one really quick, and then I'm just going to talk about the Jets under because it's crazy. But I do like the over with the Islanders and the Kings. The over is 8-1 in the Kings' last 9 games versus Eastern Conference opponents. Like I said, I'm not totally sold on their goaltending, but the under with the Colorado and Jets game. If you have just bet unders in Winnipeg Jets games this season, I mean, you are doing really, really well for yourself. They're 21-6-3 in their last 30 games. The under is versus teams with a winning record. The under is 19-6-3 in the Jets' last 28 home games. And then with the Avalanche, they're trending towards the under as well on the road, 19-5-2 in their last 26 road games. So I've, again, got an elite goaltender in Hellebuck likely getting the start. Colorado's a solid defensive team. Just keep playing the under here. I don't even really mind paying for the juice until this trend with Winnipeg takes a dive one way or the other. I'm just going to keep playing the unders on Jets games.
All right, Paul, favorite goal total and your lean.
Well, I think Jeff's onto something with Colorado and Winnipeg. This is going to be a playoff type game, and I think both teams are going to be playing a defensive style of hockey, and they've both been good at that much of the season, especially lately. And Winnipeg's getting all-world effort from Connor Hellebuck once again. It's wash, rinse, repeat with that guy. Overlooked at times, but still, for my money, one of the top 3 goalies in hockey. I'm looking at Buffalo and Philadelphia. Both teams are going all out offensively without a care or interest on the defensive side of the puck. So not only would I say go over 7, I say go up to 7.5 for a bit of a better payoff, as maybe the last goal wins it here. This might remind you of the old ball hockey games in your neighborhood when you played up to 10, first team that wins it.
Hey, Paul, goal scorer prop here. Who is putting one in net tonight? Do tell.
Well, I think there's a whole host of guys you can go for. The Leafs, when they're rolling, they count on the top 4 gunners. So Nylander and Tavares are in play at 125 and 150 respectively to score a goal. Alex Tuck watched his center get a hat trick last night. I think he goes to the net and scores tonight to pick up a money on the 180 payoff. I like that one. Sam Bennett's playing awfully well for Florida of late. And the plus 235, that seems like a very nice number to collect on. And then look at Teravainen on the wing for Sebastian Aho, who's been playing out of his mind for Carolina for the last month. I think Teravainen's going to be there for a plus 300 possibility.
All right, Jeff Ulrich.
I really like those calls by Paul. Definitely had Bennett circled as well. The odds just too big, inflated there. And I just like targeting Florida if you're looking at goal scoring props tonight. We already went over the games, got a 7 handle. You got the Panthers rested at home. So I think even just looking like at Alex Barkov at plus 145 is fair tonight. But I really like that Bennett call. I'm also going to mention from the Islanders, another team I like. Like I said, they're getting the Kings in a bad rest spot. Not the greatest goaltending on the other side. Anders Lee at plus 195. Really benefited so far from having Bo Horvat as a center. He's got 3 goals in his last 4 games. Anders Lee is just a goal scorer. So, whenever you see his odds get up a little bit in this range and in a pretty good spot at home, it's really not a bad idea to take a piece. So really looking at those Florida Panthers, like I said, Bennett definitely down the lineup, but I wouldn't mind Barkov, and then Anders Lee from the Islanders there. I think that's probably the skater I would target. I do like the Islanders tonight in that matchup, like I said.
Jeff, what's your favorite overall bet on tonight's slate? Just hit us with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting slate. I'm going to say this is probably not going to come back well, but I'm going to take the Senators at plus 210. This is a team that's just played extremely well of late, and it just feels like they're just being a little bit disrespected. I mean, they're 5-1 in their last 6 games versus the Eastern Conference. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games overall. I mean, I think at plus 210, I mean, you've got to take a little shot here that they can get this done on the money line. It just feels like the odds are a little bit too big. I know Carolina's a beast. They're well rested too, but the Senators have been off since Monday. It's a big game for them. I just think they're playing too well for them to be at plus 210. So underdog, let's take a shot here with the Senators on the road. That's my favorite overall bet, just from a value proposition.
Paul, what are you taking a shot on?
Well, I'm going to let you in on something. It's my birthday today.
Yeah, Paul! Hell yeah, brother!
Maple Leafs never lose on my birthday. So I'm
right?
taking them to win and going with the under as a parlay there to collect a 160 bet. And the Canes versus Ottawa, I see a similar thing. The Canes very tough at home, and they will win out with a plus 140 payoff over there. Coin flip for me, but a nice payoff if you look at the Islanders, I like what Jeff is talking about there. If they win over Los Angeles and it goes over 5.5, that'll net you a plus 210.
Toll, way to bury the lead that it's your birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Paul. This is the youngest you will ever be the rest of your life right now today. Good stuff, man. Enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to take a break, folks, but we got best bets around college basketball coming up with Colin Sherwin. But first, fresh off the Super Bowl victory here, Jaguars legend Chad Henne announces his retirement. And then right after that, he catches up with our guy, Ross Tucker, to talk about being a backup quarterback, his NFL experience, and gaining some crucial minutes in the postseason this year.
How much did the playoff performances against Cleveland 2 years ago and against Jacksonville this year, how much do they mean to you? I mean, I know it's kind of fresh in your mind and you just won the Super Bowl and you just retired, but kind of when you reflect back, getting those two major opportunities and helping your team get to the Super Bowl.
I think those are the two biggest moments in my career. I mean, even when I started, I mean, there was some good games. There was obviously bad games, but those two moments will always resonate with me just because of what's on the line. I think you lose and you go home. And I was able to help the team at some point get us on to pass that level in that playoff game and move on. And, this year especially get to the Super Bowl. So they'll always resonate with me. I think I'll be very proud with them. I think all the preparation that has gone into it shows that in those big moments, I was always prepared and was ready to go.
It really is unbelievable, Chad, when you think about the amount of time that you put in the last 5 years or whatever it was, really for those two moments, I mean, and I know you got a chance to play a little bit some other games, but like, it's, if you look at like time in versus time, but you were ready and you got it done. It is unbelievable. It can't be easy. And I think there's some guys that struggle as backup quarterbacks because it's hard for them to stay focused without kind of having the reward of playing in the games, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys accept the backup role. And I think my mental, thinking about it is that I never wanted to be a backup and I never accepted that. I always prepared like I was a starter, even like when Patrick's having all the success, I was like, hey, I need to compete and try to be the starter and try to make him better and make myself better. So each and every day I went into it knowing that I could be the starter. And obviously I knew, knowing that I wasn't going to, but I still kept that mental aspect of it.
What has been the feedback from any of the guys, Patrick, or any of the coaches like Andy or Matt Nagy, your quarterback coach, or even Brett Veach, the GM? Have you talked with them? What did they say? Did they know that you were going to do that after the Super Bowl, or Was that a surprise to them? And then have they said anything to you since then?
Yeah, I think it was a big surprise. I mean, the quarterback room kind of knew, but the coaching staff did, and I kind of kept that on the download just in case I did want to switch my mind or figure out what was going to go happen next. But with exit meetings, I mean, Coach Reed was great. Obviously, the appreciation for both sides, but at the same time, he's like, well, if you ever want to get into coaching, if you ever, I mean, don't ever say never. You could come back. If we want to have you back, we'll definitely have you back. But it was those conversations through him, Eric Bieniemy, Matt Nagy, whether coaching or playing again, and it's just a mutual respect. Being with those guys for so long, was definitely a tribute to them and myself.
All right, we are joined now by DK Nation's Colin Sherwin for our college basketball best bets segment. He's here. And he's perfect. All right, yeah.
She uses that line on me every day when I walk into the studio.
No, I don't. I've never once used that line on Emerson. All right, Colin, crazy time in college basketball. Less than a week away from the start of conference tournament play. Here we go. March is almost upon us. What are the biggest storylines? Yeah, I mean, I can feel the madness creeping in. What are some of the biggest storylines like going into this weekend that we should be thinking about?
For me, the most exciting thing right now is the bubble. Who's in, who's out. There's going to be some major conference teams that are going to get left out that probably should get. North Carolina was about 2 minutes from the national championship last year. If Armando Bacot doesn't twist an ankle, they probably win the national championship. And now they're really on the bubble for the NCAA tournament, which is just insane. So this weekend, I'm looking at teams that need the win, that don't want the win, that need to win. For me, that's like Pitt, who's at home against Syracuse. That spread's going to probably be about 7. That is a game where Pitt should just be able to run away and hide. Syracuse is playing for absolutely nothing right now. They're terrible. They give up more assists on baskets than any other team in the country. So for every basket they give up, a bigger percentage has an assist on it than any other team. Look for teams like USC that are going at Utah. USC got a big one last night at Colorado. They got to get this one at Utah to lock up their spot. And then that North Carolina team, they're playing Virginia. This is one of their last chances to get a quad 1 win because the ACC isn't looking great this year. Look for teams like that don't want to win, that need to win.
All right. You know what's looking great? Tomorrow's slate, not necessarily tonight. So just give me a bet, though, you do like for tonight's slate for anyone watching who wants to sprinkle something on the DK Sportsbook.
If you are just like at home and bored, I think Colorado State's probably pretty good. They're playing Wyoming. Wyoming's terrible on the road. But the big thing with Colorado State is yes, they haven't played it really good at home. They're bottom 3 in offensive rebounding rate, but honestly, it won't matter. Wyoming's pretty bad. We're getting towards the end of the season. This isn't a great spot, but it's a good spot. There's no really fantastic games tonight unless you're really going down the board. My going down the board tends to be a little more like Big West and smaller conferences on the West Coast so I can stay up late. These ones on the East Coast, there's just so much variance. These are not as good of leagues. The variance is much higher. Colorado State's your best spot tonight. It's not fantastic.
All right, so Saturday's slate has a lot of significant matchups for conference tourney seeding here. So let's start with the most anticipated matchup, arguably, but come on, it is. Number 8, Texas. Number 9, Baylor. Yeah. Longhorns sitting atop the Big 12. They're tied with number 3, Kansas. Baylor 2 games away from claiming the top spot. What is your play in this one, Colin?
So I'm going to assume that this opens like Baylor -2, and I do think Baylor's going to be the right side here. I think that might even get as high as like 3 and a hook. The reason is that Baylor's really good at home, but they're struggling on the road. And then Texas is sort of the inverse of that. Texas has won their last 2 games, but they were both at home, and then that loss at Texas Tech. That was a bad one. I mean, look, Texas is in the tournament, despite all of the absolute chaos this year in Austin and having a coach go to, get arrested, go to jail and all this kind of stuff. Like they've still somehow battled through all this. And I think that's a very good basketball team, but Baylor at home has just been a completely different animal. We saw the high level talent that they have. That first half at Kansas was great. They completely fell apart in the second half. And that's not a great sign. But when they're at home, they tend not to do those things. So I like Baylor. I think it's going to open 2, and I think it gets bet up a little bit. I will jump on Baylor as soon as it opens, if at all possible.
All right, another ranked matchup here, dude. This time, WCC, you got St. Mary's and Gonzaga. College game day, I believe, is in town tomorrow. We know the Zags trail St. Mary's by 1 game in the conference. Also, Gonzaga letting this one slip away in overtime, a couple weeks ago?
Oh, no. Don't say that. It was taken from them.
Okay.
Aiden Mahaney took that game away from them.
Calm down, reel it in, and tell me who has the edge on Saturday night and give me a bet.
Oh, boy. I think the only thing that I could possibly find here that I like is maybe a little bit of over. This is, first of all, the first version of this was the game of the year in college basketball. And Aiden Mahaney, what he did in the last 4 minutes, he literally, you could see the NBA Jam flames coming out of him. Could get to the rim at will on Gonzaga. They had absolutely no answers. But that was at home. That was in a gym with 3,500 people. That was absolutely rocking. This is different. Mahaney's still a freshman. The guys that they have, and also I think, if anything, St. Mary should play a little better on the road this time because they had guys like Johnson who just couldn't do anything. He went full Steve Sachs there in the first half in this first game. So I think that they can do it. But again, Gonzaga at home, it's going to be loud. This is for basically a chance at the 1 seed in the West Coast Conference tournament, which is huge. I don't know. I'm staying away from this one. If anything, I think it might get a little pointsy because I think Gonzaga will be able to speed them up a little bit more at home than they could on the road. But do not miss this game. West Coast Conference basketball is a gift. It has been an underrated league for so long. I think this year, with the second team that is so good that the rankings, that the power rankings are saying is so good, I think that's finally people are starting to realize they play a really, really high level of basketball in this league. This is the game of the weekend. Do not miss it. Maybe bet over, but if it opens 2, Gonzaga -2, I'm probably just going to be a stay away and enjoy it.
All right, Colin, we don't want to miss your best bet in college basketball this weekend. Real quick, what is it?
USC needs that win at Utah. They're probably going to be catching 2 when the line opens. They got big W at Colorado last night. Give me the Trojans. I think Andy Enfield continues to be I think he's the first coach in the history of USC as of last night to win 20 games 4 years in a row. Shout out to Chris Capco, his assistant, former player at my alma mater. That guy's going to be a future head coach someday. They got a lot of guys that can do it. Boogie Ellis, one of the most underrated players in the country. There's so much talent in college basketball. I don't think he gets the props they deserve. They got to get this one on the road. They're going to get it. Give me USC in the 2.
Colin, appreciate you. Love you. Miss you. Enjoy your weekend. That's a show for us. Thanks, everybody, for watching The Sweat. We're back here in studio Monday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks.